Hey everybody, how you doing? Chief, thanks for joining us. I'm letting everybody in on the meeting.
It's still coming in?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So we'll get going here in a sec.
All right.
And we'll even have a few stragglers. Every once in a while, we don't have the most punctual of people, but that's all right. We make up for it in our good looks and our activism.
So anyway, I would know that though, right?
Yeah, yeah. And they're still flying in pretty good.
How are you, Charlie?
Hey, Michael.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, as best as we can here in the COVID crisis.
Great.
Hey, Charlie,
Yes, ma'am.
are we going to have instructions on the convention this weekend at some point?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. I need it.
All right.
And how did we get our famous chief to come? He's so busy being on CNN and
I know. Well, because he's a good community spirited police chief.
I know.
All right, what do we got here?
Hi,
7.
Camille. Hi.
All right, I'm still getting them in here. And I guess one of the other things I can do here is get the PowerPoint up and ready to roll. All right.
Hello, Charlie.
Hi.
It's Kim Brown.
Hey, Kim.
How are you?
Oh, man, if I was doing any better, it'd be illegal, but I got the chief on the call. I better be
Hello,
careful.
Chief.
Hey.
Hello, Chief
Hey, Charlie,
Boone.
Hi, Charlie. This is Dave Buzard. I'm telephoning in.
All right, thanks, Dave. All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This is going to, let me see, from the beginning, Massey and mid-all. All right, let me start this slideshow, and I hope this admit button stays on there. Hey, Linwood, how you doing? All right, and again, when we get rolling, everybody, please mute yourselves. And all right, let me go ahead and get the. All right, there we go. All right, I may as well get going. Hope I better let my wife in. All right, now that Diane is in, I guess we can begin. All right, everybody, thanks for being here for our June business meeting with our very, very special guest, Chief Boone. We're going to have a wonderful meeting, and with that, we always do. We will get this thing going with our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and recite it, and you guys can follow along in your own way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And boy, how timely is the end of that in the discussion we're probably going to have tonight. Next up, I do want to, as I had done at our breakfast, I wanted to pass on our condolences here at the meeting for our longtime committee member and precinct captain, Dr. H. March Richards, on his passing. And I also am including here Edith White. Some of you may not know of Edith. She was just a woman of great history. She was a Navy woman in World War II, was vital in breaking the Japanese code that led to naval victories. And then when she settled back into Norfolk, she was a champion of the arts, of the libraries, and under death threats and threats of violence, she stood up and fought against the massive resistance. So her heart was always in the right place. So I wanted to include Miss White in this. And again, as I said at the breakfast, I'm going to just go ahead and mention a few of the falling young Black men and women who passed, were killed in ways that shouldn't happen in America. I mentioned Trevion Martin, killed for walking while black. Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed jogging while black. Philando Castile, who was killed for driving while black. Shamir Rice was killed while playing while black. Breonna Taylor was killed for sleeping while black. We have those who were in the process of being incarcerated: Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, Freddie Gray, and of course, George Floyd. And unfortunately, since the breakfast, we now have Rayshard Brooks. And I also need to point out, if you didn't know, today is the 5th anniversary of that horrible, tragic day in Charleston, South Carolina. So while we're going to bow our heads for everyone I've just mentioned, I also want to pass it on to the 9 who were killed in Mother Emanuel Church 9 years ago. So we can have just a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Next we have, we'll get to you, Chief. Let me see. You even get a round of applause coming in. But let me see who our, hey, we hold nothing back here, Chief. We'll get to your actual introduction here in a moment. But let me go through our invitees. I want to see what elected officials maybe are on the call and give them a shout out as well. I do see Blythe Scott as the Deputy Commissioner of Revenue is on here. Let me see. And if you're an iPhone or something like that and your name isn't on here, I'm going to miss you. Former Chair Linwood Fisher's on the call. Michael Kandawal on the Electoral Board. I think that Nancy is Nancy Guy, Delegate Nancy Guy. And 2nd District Chair Sandra Brandt. And that may be it. And if I missed an elected official, I apologize. So with that, let's get to our special guest speaker. I do want to let you guys know this month that I know we're going to have a great, respectful conversation and discussion on policing in America, and more specifically, policing in Norfolk. But if you have a question, please put it in the chat bar, and some of the officers, Grant and Toy, someone will go ahead and ask the questions. Because it's very timely. The policing in America, the violence that's happening in America has finally risen to the forefront of our public policy discussion and our efforts in reforms moving forward. So, Chief, thank you. You got a little bio. Give me a second here. Chief Boone, native of inner city New Brunswick, New Jersey, born in a non-traditional family, including 4 siblings. Chief Boone lived in a bleak and chaotic environment until his adolescent years, where his experiences subsequently led to unfavorable encounters with law enforcement. As a result of these incidents, a decision was made that Chief Boone would move to Northampton County, North Carolina, to live with his grandparents, where he began a positive shift towards changing the trajectory of his future. Chief began his law enforcement career with the Norfolk Police in 1989 and was appointed the Chief of Police December 1st, 2016. With that said, Chief, if you got some opening remarks you want to present to us, floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. We are certainly under some challenging times that we find ourselves as a profession, so the timing is appropriate. Just a little bit about me. You read my bio, but I want to talk about a little bit about professionally with respect as a police chief. I became police chief in December of 2016. And with that, you know, there were some things I wanted to do that we were already doing, but not at the level that I thought we can improve upon. That was intersecting with the community. I wanted to expand upon that. I will say, and a lot of people don't know this, but our first year with me at the helm, we had double-digit crime reductions, both with violent crime as well as property crime. And we did the same thing the next year, a double-digit of crime with respect to violent crime and property crime. And we're still continuing to go down with respect to crime. Over the last 4 years, we have reduced crime incidents, okay, an incident by the tune of like 2,800 crime incidents. So we're really efficient with respect to how do we go about addressing crime. We changed some of our philosophies as opposed to going into certain neighborhoods and focusing on the whole. We now focus on certain individuals that we have a good idea that are driving the crime in our city. It's been really stressful at times trying to maintain that level of excellence, but we've been maintaining it. And like I said, currently we're looking at a 15% reduction in total crime. And anytime you have double digits, I can tell you from my 30 years experience, that's always something to celebrate, because typically when you look at crime reduction, it's either up or down by 1 or 2 percentage points. But the other side of that is we wanted to elevate, like I said previously, our ability to intersect with the community and develop programs that address individuals from 5 to gray. You know, we have over 20 plus programs. Some have been nationally recognized. Some have been internationally recognized. One of them I'll speak about because it's a program that a lot of police departments in the region has adopted as well. We have a literacy program that we partner with LEC, Reverend Turpin and his wife, Wanda. And the program looks like this. We've identified several Title I schools, and you all know what a Title I school is. And I have about 55 to 60 officers every year that will tutor a young child, kindergarten to first grade. And at the end of that school year, you know, they are able to read at the level they should be able to. And that does multiple things for us. It gives us an opportunity to speak and influence a young person, and for them to see us in a different light other than enforcing the law. And also for us, you know, it gives us the ability to give back in a more authentic and personal way. And we've been doing that program for about 6 years now. And like I said, there's some other agencies in the region that has adopted that as well. When we look at our current environment, and I'm talking about some of the things that was mentioned previously with the last subject being what's going on in Atlanta. You know, we've had a lot of demonstrations over the last 16 days here in Norfolk. And I like to think, because we've done such heavy lifting and trying to relate to our community, that we here in Norfolk hadn't really had any problems. We hadn't had any vandalism. We hadn't really had any bricks thrown, no arrest. Our only challenge has been the monument. For some reason, they want to spray paint the monument, and that's been our biggest challenge thus far. We've been lucky in that regard, and I think a lot of that is because of what we've done in the past. We certainly started building relationships long before the George Floyd incident. And we started 5-6 years ago with, you know, having barbecues and backyards and getting to know our stakeholders and things of that nature, and some of the programs I mentioned earlier. Also, when you think about our current environment, you know, there's a lot of discussion going on about police reforms and defunding the police. A lot of the topics regarding police reform, such as de-escalation, meaning, you know, if you come across someone that's going through something or that may be potentially violent, you create that opportunity to separate and use time to bring that person down. There's discussions about intervention, duty to intervene if you see your fellow officer being a little heavy-handed, as well as a host of other things, chokeholds, restrictions, things of that nature. Here in Norfolk, we've had already established that those things had already been put in place prior to the Floyd incident. So we have a lot of things that we already do and has already been established prior to Floyd. Not saying we are perfect. There's certainly room for improvement. Nobody's perfect, but I think we are, you know, head and shoulders above some agencies that have none of those things, and they're scrambling right now trying to implement some of those things. When you're talking about defunding the police department, I embrace that idea, not in the sense of getting rid of the police department. That certainly doesn't make any sense. I'm talking more of taking some of the stressors off police, such as right now we are largely responsible for addressing folks that may be homeless on the street, largely responsible to a large degree of folks going through a mental crisis, and as well as folks dealing with substance abuse. I always say, when you start sending badges and guns to those type of situations, that's not what we are trained to do to a large degree. We receive training, but the bulk of our training is crime fighting. That should be our chief concern. So when you talk about defunding the police department, that's where my interest lies in. You know, I have a couple of things that we're going to be discussing going forward, and how do we take this moment and become better as a police agency and as a community and as a city. I'm sure there's many of folks out there that have a lot of ideas, and, you know, I welcome them all. I am currently in discussion with Bishop McBath. We're going to be having some community discussions about the current environment and doing some Q&A with his congregation as well as others. I'm not certain at this point how many we're going to have, but I can tell you this, policing across the country is going to change. And I tell my staff that let's get ready, let's adapt, and we will adapt, because that's what this profession does. We always find a way to adapt. And we'll get through this. It's been challenging, but we'll get through this. And with that, I'll take any questions anyone may have.
Sure. Well, let me start off the first one, which, by the way, Grant Natoy, I don't know, because I'm in screen share here, I can't find the chat box, so you might have to bail me out here. But anyway, yeah, well, you're talking about adapting and changes, Chief. So I guess let me ask you the first question. Are there some functions that are currently falling on Norfolk police officers? I guess it's part of the concept of the defund movement that might be better serviced through other professionals. You know, do we need to send you guys in for marital fights, you know, or does a social, you know, a psychologist or something better suited to address those? Are there those types of calls better suited for others than Norfolk Police?
Yes, sir. And I'll go in order. My chief concern would be mental health concerns, folks dealing with mental psychosis. When you look across the country and you look at the data, if there's going to be an officer involved shooting, a large percentage of those incidents involve someone that's dealing with a mental or psychosis. Although most of my officers are crisis intervention trained, they're not the subject matter experts in that regard. And one of the things I would push for is putting that responsibility on folks that are the professionals. Okay, we are sort of in the minor leagues when it comes to that.
I'm sorry about that.
So that would be my chief concern right away, if any defunding of the police department should come about. And I'm certain that it's coming.
All right. Again, I don't know what happened to my chat box. So Grant Natoy, are there questions in the queue?
Yep. So there are a couple. Yep.
Yeah,
There's
thanks.
a couple questions. So, and you may not be aware of this, but Deborah Brown asked, what are your opinions of the charges that just came in the Richard Brooks shooting? I'm not sure if you are aware of that. If not, you know, that's okay too.
Yeah, you know, let me just put it this way. When the George Floyd incident occurred, everyone saw that was on display for public consumption. The whole nation saw that. His death was slow and deliberate and rather casual. And I recall getting interviewed, and I forget whoever the media channel was at the time, they wanted my opinion on that. And I was rather quick in saying it was murder, you know, that the officer should be terminated and they should all be arrested for murder. This particular incident, as I looked at it initially, you know, the officers, they practice de-escalation. There was conversation until they went to handcuff the individual. And then there was a fight. The individual, as most of you have seen, took off running with the officer's taser. Now, if it was me, one of the things I would have done was I have his car. I'm certain they knew who he was. I would have let him just go. That's my thinking. That's part of the de-escalation piece. But I don't like to second guess anyone in the heat of the moment. The officer gave chase, and at some point, Mr. Brooks deployed the taser at the officer. And I don't know whether or not it struck him or not. My concern would be at that point that is less than lethal force on the behalf of Mr. Brooks. But the thing with the taser, you get one shot, and after that, it's ineffective. So I would have hoped that the officer would have realized that, and I'm certain that he did realize that, but you never know in the heat of the moment. And he returned fire, striking Mr. Brooks twice in the back. So at first blush, at looking at that and looking at the policy of the Atlanta Police Department, it appears as though he was acting within the scope of their policy. But I got to tell you, what I heard today recalibrated my thinking. I understand that after Mr. Brooks was shot twice, that the officer that shot him kicked him, and then they stood on top of his body, and that just, that just changed my whole perspective as to what was their mindset going into all of this. So I think that had this happened without the George Floyd crisis going on, I don't think we would be where we are right now. I truly believe that the officers would have been afforded due process. I don't think they would have been immediately terminated, but there were some things going on in the Atlanta Police Department that's been highlighted for the last 5 to 7 days that says there's something going on in that department with respect to use of force. And I know that was a roundabout way of answering the question, but at first blush, at looking at that, I thought the officers were acting within the scope of their policy because I read their policy, but the actions they took after shooting him changed my perspective.
Yeah, and I guess, Chief, where the rubber meets the road, and this is just speculation and whatever, is if it was me and I was drunk and I, for whatever reason, acted out, did all those kind of stuff and started running, I'm just going to speculate there's not a way in the world that I was going to get shot twice. And that's, I guess, where the rubber meets the road. And how do we deal with that concept?
Are you saying because you're a white male? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because my daughter sent me a video clip, and I don't know where it was, but there was a gentleman that was giving an officer a very difficult time, and this is fairly recent. Mm-hmm. And the officer told the gentleman to do certain things, and the gentleman would not do it. At some point, the officer tased the gentleman, and it was ineffective. And the gentleman started pursuing the officer. The officer took off running, and he actually started pursuing the officer. Well, he chased the officer just far enough where the officer left his vehicle, his police vehicle, running. Mm-hmm. The suspect got in the officer's car and drove away and started just driving rather recklessly, crashing into various things. And once his backup got there, he was arrested. And at the end of the video, someone says, onlookers, you can hear them say, well, if he was black, he would have been shot a long time ago. And that really opened my eyes because I could tell you everything I saw that suspect do and the steps and the measures that the officer took with him, that gave me pause. So that video is out there for public consumption. And the thing about it, you don't know the color of the suspect until the onlookers say, I think if he was black, he would have been shot a long time ago. Yeah. So that's very eye-opening.
Right. Let me say, Carrie Buchanan, let me unmute you. Go ahead, Carrie, you got something?
Yes. Recently in our neighborhood, we had an issue where somebody we know who was mentally ill and was in crisis mode. And it elevated to the point where it was, the police got involved. I guess he insulted a police officer and he was arrested and is currently in jail. But the question I have at this point is there another way that we can deal with this? Because we all knew that this was coming. I mean, this was not an unknown person to the neighborhood. We all know he's got various issues. And it's just, it had gotten very scary with this individual, but it was also something where we really had no other choice but to call the police. And we just, is there another way that we should be dealing with this?
And I take it this was in Norfolk?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to commend those officers for, one, handling that call without any conflict. Because if he's currently in jail, you know, that means they were able to bring him down and resolve the issue. I guess the question is, and the challenge is, whether or not jail is the right spot for him. That's a discussion that the police needs to have with the community service board. Not knowing all the moving parts surrounding this, I don't know what he was arrested for. I don't know his level of mental psychosis, but what I am thankful for, it appears as though it was resolved without any conflict. And yes, there needs to be someone other than police handling folks going through mental psychosis, the homeless, as well as folks dealing with substance abuse. I think that, you know, so much mission creep has crept into the responsibility of law enforcement that we are overstressing our law enforcement agency. And it's not just here in Norfolk, it's across the country. And we need to have some real hard discussions surrounding how do we retract some of this responsibility with our officers so that they are really functioning and paying attention to their core function, which is crime reduction and community relations.
I do want to point out that along the way here, our great city treasurer, Dawn Hester, has joined the call. So welcome, Dawn. Grant, you got anything else in there?
Right
Yeah,
on
there's quite a few. So I'll kind of lump two of these together. The first part of the question is, what kind of qualifications or criteria does the city of Norfolk look for officers? And then additionally to that, is there any additional training or psychological testing that the officers go through to ensure that they can handle the stresses of the job?
Very good. So to join the police academy, one, you have to have at least a GED, okay? And that's been that way for a very, very long time, high school diploma, GED. And that's not just in Norfolk, that's across the country for the most part. You cannot have been convicted of any felonies or use of Schedule I drugs, cocaine, heroin, things of that nature. You have to be at least 20 and a half to enter the police academy. And of course, there's a host of psychological exams as well as physical exams to join the academy. Our academy is very, very stringent. I could start a police academy of 25 to 30 individuals, and I know with absolute certainty I'm going to lose 10 to 12 of them. This is a difficult job, and we're not just handing out trophies. You have to be able to carry yourself in a certain fashion, physically and mentally, to get to the point where you take that oath. There are some departments that that level of excellence isn't quite there. You know, anytime you start an academy with 30 and you graduate 30, I'm suspicious of that in the sense of what type of quality officer are you bringing on? Is there room for improvement? Yes, there is. One of the things we want to look at is not just your ability to do the job physically and mentally, but we want to test your heart too, to make sure that you have an empathetic heart, that, you know, the days of being a cowboy and joining the police department is over. I know when I joined some 30 years ago, you know, being 6'2", 250 pounds, you know, that, you know, I was the cat's meow. We've gotten away from that. You know, we want to be a very diverse department. We want to have males, females, members of the LGBTQ plus community, Hispanics, Asians. You know, as I sit here today, we are the most diverse police department in the state of Virginia. And I'm not just talking about officers, I'm talking about people in decision-making positions. So I'm very proud of that. That was intentional. I'm not saying that we gave anybody anything, because that's certainly not the case, but we made a platform so that everybody had an opportunity to compete fairly, and those that were capable have been selected. So I'm very proud to say that, and I say that with big teeth. We are the most diverse police department in the state.
That's reassuring. All right, we're at 7:35, 7:36. Grant, can we roll through some real quick here? I don't want to keep you well into the night, Chief.
Sure. So one of the questions is kind of a broad scope question is, what legislation at the state level, if any, do you believe would help improve the situation that we have?
So, you know, and I guess we're talking about reforms. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I would assume that's what the question just kind of says, legislation, but I would assume that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the reforms, because that's what folks are talking about at this moment. The biggest impact right now would be a unified front in terms of tracking officers, bad officers, okay, officers terminated from one agency going to another. Right now, we have some blind spots in that regard. You know, you could be terminated from Norfolk for, lying or some excessive force or something or another. And you may have the ability to go to a smaller agency and be hired there. Those things have happened. I can assure you, though, here in Norfolk, we're going to take a look under the bed. If you're coming from another agency, we're going to go to that agency and take a look at your discipline history. And if you were terminated or terminated in lieu of resigning, we're not going to hire you. So one of the things that can be done at the state level is mandating that all departments take a look at who they're hiring and whether or not that officer was terminated from another organization. And there are some things with respect to banning chokeholds, mandating that there's a duty to intervene if your officer or your fellow officer is getting heavy-handed, de-escalation. There's a host of things that are best practices that are out there if it was mandatory, not just at the state level, nationwide, because there are 18,000 police departments in the country and everybody does something different. We are CALEA certified, and what that says that we are a small group of police departments. I think it's about 4% of the nation's police department, maybe a little higher, that are CALEA certified. And what that says, we have the best practices based on the recommendations of academics, subject matter experts regarding use of force, training, and how we handle multitude of things. If that was something that was mandated throughout the state or throughout the nation, you know, a lot of these challenges that this profession is facing can be greatly minimized.
Yeah, well, that's reassuring. I got another hand raised here, Raman Fatahi. Got a question? And then we'll kind of wrap it up, because we could probably go on, like I said, for a long time here.
Yes, thanks, Charlie. Frankly, less of a question than an observation, which is that I've got a lot of friends who are prosecutors around the state, and I've been watching what's been going on in their cities. Chief, I've said this in private, but I'm going to say it in public. A lot of the fact that we have had peaceful protests and that things have gone as smoothly as they have in Norfolk is because of the hard work that Chief Boone has put in community outreach and in devoting his officers to buying into community outreach, not just going through the motions, but actually doing it. So, you know, everybody likes to talk about what's going wrong in government. I think as citizens of Norfolk, we're actually really lucky to have the chief and the chief's philosophies on our side.
Thank you, Ramin. Thank you.
Grant, you
Hey,
got
anytime.
a stem winder to close?
These are kind of, again, broad scope questions, but in terms of crime prevention or anything like that, is there anything that doesn't involve like additional surveillance or any additional policing that would fit kind of in that model that you all are doing or anything like that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
One more time. That was.
that blew by me too.
Yeah, so the question word for word is, what are the plans to prevent crime that don't involve additional surveillance of people, and how would this fit into future defunding plans?
Well, every city is different with respect to what drives their crime, okay? Our crime culture is different from Portsmouth, is different from Virginia Beach, is different from Newport News. What drives our crime is poverty, okay? Poverty, you know, and this is interesting. When I became chief, I spent a lot of my time in the gang squad. I was the supervisor as a lieutenant for the first gang squad established by then Regina Williams, city manager under Bruce Marquis, and they wanted to be really surgical in how we went about addressing crime and gangs in our city. And I was in that position for about 2 years before I made captain. But while there, I learned very quickly that our violent crime and a lot of our property crime is driven by those in gangs. And it's also driven by those living in some of our most challenging communities. So my first year as chief, I really wanted to surgically address that group of individuals, as well as guns. I recall in February of 2016, or 2017 actually, there was a Virginia Pilot article, and it surrounded gun violence. And it was a still photo of 3 black juveniles. And in that still photo, 2 of the 3 I knew had been killed due to gun violence. And one of the things I wanted to start concentrating on is, well, how are these young kids getting their hands on these guns? So we started a different process here in Norfolk. And I say a different process in the sense that in the past, if there was a crime involving a gun, we would arrest the suspect, and the gun we would simply put on a voucher. We just put it in abeyance and never really look at it again. So the philosophy changed in the sense that, okay, we're going to start looking at these guns, see who's buying these guns, and we're tracking them now. So over the course of 3 years, we know with absolute certainty who's buying the guns and where they ultimately end up. So over here, you have guns being bought legally in 2 locations, one in Norfolk and one in Virginia Beach, primarily. But over here, the guns end up in our challenging communities in the hands of gang members and felons and young people as young as 11 years of age. And over the last 3 years, we've collected data that presents a map. And that map shows where these guns end up. You can take that map, let's just call it a gun map. You can lay that gun map over the poverty map. You can lay that poverty map over a map that Centera has that highlights where folks are impacted the most with health issues. And they fit hand in glove, the gun map, the poverty map, as well as the health map. So long way of answering your question. For Norfolk, our issues surround people. There is no technology by way of surveillance and how do we impact crime. We have to deal with people. But first, we have to remove those systematic processes that are in place that impact those communities. And I use the word systematic because there's no doubt in my mind when you have health, education, poverty, and these guns as well as drugs ending up in these communities, it's systematic. It's not happenstance. And we have to remove those processes in place that allow that to happen.
Wow. Yeah. And that's profound and accurate. And you're right. You're right. And I can't help but thank you enough. We're 45 minutes into this.
Wow, that was fast.
Fast 45 minutes. Again, thank you so much.
Yes.
I think Norfolk is blessed to have you at the helm of our police department. You've said a lot of things that were timely. I love the idea that you said you're one of the 4%. What was the key?
Kalia.
Certified?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a point of pride for all of us in Norfolk, and thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I owe it all to my women and men. They're good
Yeah.
people. They work very, very hard. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Well, that was great. All right, I guess moving on to the more mundane business, items of life and death. All right, Barbara, we emailed all of the minutes. Hopefully you had a chance to review the minutes. And unless I hear an objection, we are going to accept the minutes as presented. And we're going to go 3, 2, 1. All right, minutes are accepted. Grant, treasurer's report.
Sure. So, got some odd dates on there, Charlie, but the numbers are correct.
Oh, you're right. You didn't update. Yeah, my fault. The numbers are right.
The numbers are right. So this month we were a little light on any kind of receipts. So we had one member join, pay their dues. Additionally, our donations for our Facebook advertising was $47.91. So we had a total receipts of $67.91, and our expenses were for our Zoom premium package. So that was a relatively light month, but in the bank right now, we have $9,739.29, and that all comes out even. So that's good news.
That's good news. And the $47.91, just to point out, was in kind as opposed to cash expenditure.
Correct. And Charlie, did you want to mention the other thing that we were doing?
That's going to come up.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Then, all right. Chair's report. Just for those who weren't made aware of it, I just think that's cool as can be. As you can see on that screenshot, the NCDC went national. That is a Fox News screenshot there, and you can see me and Carrie and Jay and Nancy and And Deborah, Atoy down there, Andrea, Megan, all of us had a cameo, but I could tell you what it's all about. But we might as well let none other than Stephen Colbert actually explain what that's about. Come on. My internet speed. Unstable. Boy, isn't that the truth. Are you going to do this to me, really? Wow. Come on. Load.
With the entire world exploding in protest over racial injustice and the ongoing global health crisis, it might be easy to miss some of the little stories, the ones that fall through the cracks. Like the presidential election. Well, last night we got reports of a potential bombshell thanks to a leaked Zoom call with Virginia Democrats held by Biden surrogate and man dreaming of a same tomorrow, Terry McAuliffe. Well, this morning, Fox News was pretty jazzed about their little scoop.
Fox News exclusively obtains video of a top Biden surrogate, Terry McAuliffe, telling Virginia Democrats that the former vice president should remain in his basement where he's been campaigning remotely during the pandemic.
People say all the time, oh, we got to get the vice president out of the basement. He's fine in the basement. 2 people see him a day, he's 2 body people. That's it. And let Trump keep doing what Trump's doing.
That's your exclusively obtained video? That doesn't have to be obtained by anyone. I'll come out and say it publicly. Joe, stay in the basement. Because without leaving your house, you're crushing Trump with a staggering 14-point lead. You are kicking Trump's ass. Admittedly, that's not a hard thing to do. It's a pretty generous target. Just swing your leg. You're going to hit something. In fact, Trump has seen a drop in his poll numbers spanning virtually all demographic groups. And women might be his undoing this time because Trump trails Biden by 25 points among them.
So there you go. My only complaint was, gosh darn it, they said Virginia Democrats and not Norfolk Democrats. But there was our moment in the sun. One other thing, and again, Tim Rothgab, what you got? Yeah, Tim.
All right, now I'm unmuted. I was just wondering, how did they obtain that video or whatever they obtained?
Well, as they said, it was tremendous investigative work on their part. I could be flippant and say they went to our Norfolk City Democratic Committee YouTube channel and just watched it, which it's out there for public consumption. But the truth be known, there was most likely a person on our breakfast or our tea with Terry that was there for nefarious purposes to follow the former governor and trying to get some scoop. And I will say this as well. I spent about a day of incoming on Twitter and emails. They contain within the Fox News online article. They mentioned that Norfolk Chair Charles Stanton compared the D-Day to Antifa, which of course I didn't do, but that's fine. So I had some angry emails and Twitter stuff. But I think somebody following Terry McAuliffe got on the call just to see if they could do what they did. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay, thanks,
Yep.
Charlie. I've got, just to give you a heads up, I've got a couple things, but I don't think that right now is the appropriate time, but I think later in the meeting I have some things I'd like to mention. I'm going to mute myself and let you go on. Okay,
very good. Just some concept here. We were kicking around the idea, and Atoy more than studiously pointed out, we're thinking, and if we'll probably do this through donations, so if we can get this funded. I kind of like the idea of maybe having Norfolk specific bumper stickers, yard signs, that kind of thing. That was our first kind of mock-up at it. Norfolk, Blue Wave, Biden, Warner, Scott, Loria. But as Toy told me, you can't do anything in that regard until Biden's VP has selected. So that's going to be down the road. We'll play around with the designs, but does that sound like a reasonable thing? I just like the idea of being local, if I can get people to pay for it. Well,
It's a great idea, I think.
yeah. I just think, can you, having these things all over town, Norfolk, Democrats, and, we'll play around with it. I like the idea as well. Thanks.
Well, Charlie,
Last thing, yep.
I like the idea too, but as with everything, comes down to money.
Oh, yeah. And have access to it, as they say.
Well,
the last thing I'm going to go with here, I didn't have this slide up last time. People are asking the duties of the precinct captains. Come hell or high water, no matter what, we are going to hopefully have a list of people next month to present as precinct captains be voted in. But for those who are not on the, who are not current members or precinct captains, it's a pretty simple concept. There is our literal definition. Organized precinct represents so as to maximize Democratic vote therein, do their best to communicate with newly registered voters. And as I just threw in there, we, recruit an assistant precinct, recruit block captains, work with your area chairs, and any number of other things. And the reason I say that we've got to get better, we still got a boatload of precincts. So if there's anybody on this call that's not a member, not a precinct captain, currently who wants to step up, it's only the most important election of our lifetime. As Terry said in the call, we really do need to step up our organization skills. So I'm going to ask you to, if you're living in any of those precincts in red and who want to consider becoming a little more active, please do.
Hey, Charlie,
Yes.
can you go back one slide, please? Oh, that one, the precinct duty captains. Is that exactly as it reads? Because grammatically, that's horrendous.
Oh, well, I think I took it out of the bylaws, but
It shall be the every.
Oh, no, that's probably a typo then. Where is it?
That's why I'm
very
like,
first line.
Oh. All right. Well, that's why I'm moving the slide so you don't catch it. No, that is not how it is, and I apologize. I typed that up late this afternoon.
Well,
and then all right,
Charlie,
so again, yes.
I don't know if this is the appropriate point, but since you're talking about precinct captains, I think it's germane. I'm trying to, and I haven't put it out yet, but I'm trying to come up with a program I call Go Small.
Right.
And by that, I mean, since we can't get out knocking doors, I'm going to use the list I have of emails from people in my precinct. I'm going to ask everyone to start talking to their neighbors over the fence.
Yeah.
So basically by going small, I'm talking about everybody just talking to the people around them that they can talk to in their neighborhood where they can still maintain their social distancing. You don't have to be knocking doors to talk to people and, doing that type of thing, because I don't feel that it's going to be possible or practical for me to be out knocking doors in this pandemic. And I'm trying to find ways that we can better communicate with people. And so that's
okay.
The idea I've come up with.
Well, yeah, no, which is fine if it works good for you. We got some campaign folks over there who I'm sure will probably weigh in at their opportunity on what field is going to look like during the COVID crisis here.
Okay.
On committee reports, Randy, we had a last minute entry.
Yes,
Wanna
we
bring that
did.
forward?
We approved a new associate that's just this afternoon. Her name is Nan Byrne. She's a longtime Virginia Beach resident who moved to Massachusetts several years ago, but she's back in the area now for the next several months, hanging out with some people in the Freemason district. So she joined up because she wants to stay involved while she's down here. And that's the only new member we have. I just wanted to point out one more time that if you look at the city committee website, norfolkdemocrats.org, you will find a PDF copy of the membership form there, and you can download it and fill it out and sign it, and either mail it in or make an image of it or take a picture and email that to the norfolkdemocrats@gmail.com.
Well, Brandy, I am going to use that as a segue because I feel like I'm on NPR now. Because today, actually not today, going forward until we run out, we actually have an incentive for you to join the committee. So if you were not a current member of the committee, we're asking you to join, get involved in your precinct operation, and what do they say on NPR? As a show of our appreciation, we will provide you a beautiful Norfolk Dems face mask, 3-layer, reusable, washable, this, that, and the other thing. So again, these were donated to us. So what an incentive. Join the committee, get a mask, and we'll send emails out. So we appreciate some of our elected officials who kicked in a little bit of money to pay for them. But they're good looking masks, and not only do you get something for joining the committee, you'll be advertising the committee as well. And yes, the question might be asked, what about us current members? We will have them made available to current members. However, if you want to throw in $1.98 or $2 to help defray the cost, we'll take that too on our Act Blue page. But they are going to be made available to our current members as well. But throw us a few bucks to help defray the cost. So with that, again, we're in the time of COVID. Megan, you do anything sexy in outreach this month?
I don't know that I'd call it sexy. I've gone to a couple of events, you know, just trying to focus on the events at this point now, as opposed to, you know, getting in people's faces since we can't physically do that. But I do want to thank Sandra Brandt, who spent some time with me on the phone since our last meeting, giving me ideas. She and Barbara have been really helpful with that. So other than the email outreach that I've been doing, no, there has not been, you know, especially nothing sexy.
Okay. Dave, I'm pretty sure we don't have any resolutions. Betty, anything new on voter registration efforts?
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just a couple of things. I did receive some information from the Virginia Voter Protection Team, Democratic Party of Virginia Voter Protection Team. They're looking for volunteers to be poll observers and precinct observers in certain congressional districts. And those districts that they're focusing on are the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 11th congressional district. So if anyone have free time on their hand and want to help out in those districts on this upcoming June 23rd, I know it's a Republican primary, but they are looking for observers to watch for any unusual things that's going on at those precincts.
So just to clarify, it's a Republican primary in Norfolk, but there are Democratic primaries in other parts of the state, which is probably what those districts are about.
Right.
Right, and those are the ones that they looking at. I think these are where the lines were redrawn, and we're expecting, I guess, some unusual activity. But even in Norfolk, if you hear of anything unusual going on or see anything, please report that to the Virginia Voter Hotline, and that number is 844-4-Virginia-VOTE, VOTE. And I'll repeat that again, 844-48-8683. And that's the Virginia Voter Hotline. And that's for any election held in the city of Norfolk, or even if you hear some unusual activity going on across the state of Virginia. I do have coming up on next Friday, June the 26th. Of course, most of us knew Yvonne Leo, who was very active in Virginia Beach, who we lost a couple of months ago. She was a key person with voter registration and information for that city. I was asked to come and participate or facilitate a voter registration and information drive that will be sponsored by the City of Virginia Beach, the New Jerusalem Church and God in Christ, the Virginia Beach Police Department, Fire Department, and surrounding civic leagues, CTEC, and civic leagues in that area. Her counterpart, Yvonne Yarn, will be helping me out with that initiative. So, and if anyone in Norfolk want to join me, please contact me, and I'll be happy to have you. And again, that's Friday, June 26th, 6 p.m., 118 Bishop Thurgood Drive. And for the voter protection hotline, if you, again, see anything, hear anything, please contact that number. And if you want to volunteer with voter protection in any upcoming election, please contact me as well. That's it.
Thanks, Patty. Ms. Taylor, you have your hand up? You got something
Hi.
right here? Hey, what you got?
Hi. I need for the person in my area to get in contact with me. I live on Poplar Hall Drive, 5920 Poplar Hall Drive in Norfolk, 23502 area code.
All right. You want the precinct captain from Poplar Hall to get a hold of you?
I have no idea who that is, really.
Well, it's Ophelia Watley, I think, who's probably on the call, I think. But we'll
I
hook
have
you
no
guys
idea.
up.
I don't even know what she looked like.
Well, we're going to hook you guys up. How's that?
Okay.
That
Thank
good?
you.
Are you on here, Ophelia? You're on here, I thought, for a minute. All right. Thank you. And again, okay. And
Come in, Charlie.
yes.
Hey, this is Kim Brown. You know, I'm the area chair in that area. So if you don't want to, you know, she can't get in touch with Ophelia, I will help.
Okay.
Thanks.
We're here to help, Miss Taylor.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And Carolyn, again, probably similar to Megan, we don't have much in the way of events, do we? Carolyn.
Oh, she ain't on here tonight.
She was on here. All right. Let me see. Oh, nope, she dropped off. All right. Next. Okay, we don't have any old business. So now we go to current business. Veronica or anybody from the Laureate campaign on to update us?
I'm here with Medea. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Medea.
Hey, everybody. Hello from Nashville, Tennessee, where I am right now. I am making my drive into Virginia Beach because I'm moving into the district. I flew in from Japan a couple of days ago, and then I had to pick up my car. So it's kind of been a long journey through the pandemic zone. So here I am in my mask. Things are going well in the campaign. Actually, I'm by myself right now, so I can take it off. Things are going well in the campaign. We have hired staff, so we are not a one-man team of Medea anymore. We have a field manager, Peggy, who might have given some of you guys a call. We have 12 interns in our field team. We've just gotten 3 more interns who onboarded later on. And we have also just hired a mobilization director. The job of the mobilization director is to kind of help us lift the more digital operation piece. So in addition to just doing regular field, we have this extra component of doing everything digitally. And Emily, who we have hired to be the mobilization director, comes in with a strong data and digital background who can kind of support the team. We are doing trainings.
Do I want to buy her a cocktail so she can educate me on digital?
Well, you know, we can do trainings. I mean, we are, you know, Emily is great at trainings. So if we need to have a training together, we're absolutely happy to do that. We're going to be also training people on making calls, on making texts, on being social media ambassadors. So if anyone has not had a training with us yet, please sign up for one of our upcoming trainings. The more trained volunteers we have, the more people are ready to go to start contacting voters in the beginning of July. And we know the more voters we can contact, the more voters we can identify, and the more voters we can turn out. So that's kind of what the program looks like. I know there was some talk about earlier on this call about potentially doing something in person or possibly knocking or something like that. We do not know as of right now what that is going to look like, but we do have a plan A, B, and C. We have a plan for if we open up and we need to be offline and on the doors and in person. We have a plan for only ever partially opening up between now and Election Day. We have a plan for not opening up at all. So either way, field is going to go on and voters are going to get contacted and volunteers will be recruited. That's kind of the three contingency plans we have lined up for either way that's going to happen.
Right.
We're going to have trainings pretty much every day between now and the Republican primary. So text bank trainings, phone bank trainings, and social media trainings. In addition to that, the Party Building Summit is June 27th. I'm going to add the link in the chat window because I promised Veronica I would do that. So here it comes, click paste. So you can go ahead and sign up there as well if you haven't done so already. And our link for all of our events is just mobilize.us/Loria for Congress. I can add that in the chat window too. I just have to type it when I'm done talking. And that's kind of everything that's happening on our end. You know, we are just, we're a full team now, so we're keeping busy, getting everybody activated and making sure we're talking to as many people as possible and making sure that as many people who want to be involved in the campaign are getting involved. And appreciate many of the faces that I recognize on this call that are helping us do this by making calls with us and have gotten trained with us and are supporting the campaign's efforts. So it's always great to hop on these calls with you guys and see you all and meet you all.
All right, thanks, Medea. And plus you're 11 or 12 time zones closer. That's a good thing.
I am, yeah. I have in fact been hopping a time zone every day for the last 7 days, and tomorrow I will be in yours.
Good, 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 good. Sandra Brandt, the second CD chair, your hand is up here. What's up?
Hey, I just wanted to mention that if people have not received their link for voting on Saturday and Sunday, please contact the voter protection number that Betty stated earlier. We have some people that we have a unique number and a link to get to vote on Saturday. I will say that we'd love for you to tune in from 10 to 12 on Saturday for the convention. It's not mandatory for those who want to vote. And I think we have a lot of other events coming this weekend, which many of our people should have received. So if you haven't got your email yet or unique number, you can let me know if you're in the second, you let Clint know if you're in the third, and we'll be glad to make sure that you get that information. And finally, as many of you know, I'm running for DNC, and there's no one from our area running. The closest place is Richmond. So I would appreciate any support of good Norfolk folks to vote for me. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sandra. We got to get rolling here. Tim and Bob, what do you got? Tim Rothgeb.
Yes, what I've got is emergency. We may want to consider adding to the executive committee or whatever you call it, someone for emergency planning. You know, because we're in this COVID thing and everything's, you know, we need to start planning now for what we're going to do in November. One
Yeah.
thing that I might suggest, and it doesn't have to be decided now, but it'll have to be decided soon. We may want to provide N95 masks for our volunteers at the polls so that they not only are protecting others, but they're protecting themselves.
And I am sure all the campaigns are all over that kind of thinking, plans A, B, C, and D. I can't help but think they're not doing that.
Well, we could coordinate with them then, or
Oh, yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
But it would be nice to know that whoever's going to volunteer at the polls this November, you're going to be safe. Last thing I'll say, just for those who are woodworkers out there, if you have a respirator of your own that is asbestos qualified, you are protected. I looked it up, and the asbestos masks are actually one level above the N95s. So I'll mute now and let you go on about it.
Yep, we got 14 minutes to wrap up and many things to do. Bob, what do you got? Bob Baxter. Did you have a question, Bob?
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment that I attended several of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And one of the things I noticed that there were people at each of them who were saying, if you have not registered to vote, you should do so now. It's important. We need you out there. And it wasn't anybody from the Democratic Party that stood up, just one of the other activists. And that's something we might think about in terms of outreach at being at these demonstrations. The ones I have been to, there all were opportunities to speak. And it might be worth considering that.
Well,
the other thing that I noticed is I could not figure out who the organizers were for one of the events that I went to, but it was well organized. What I did notice was that one of the organizers was wearing a pistol. It was open carry. And that actually made me feel ill at ease. And it was also very anti-police. There were a lot of slogans that they were using. And that bothered me some because I thought the police were doing a really good job. That's all. I just want to make a comment.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Ryan Jackson, what's going on with Mark Warner? You got a minute?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak, Charlie. Can everybody mute their phones? It's a little bit of a feedback, I think. I want to say it's a toy, so I don't want to call you out. But yeah, thank you all for having me this evening. I think I just want to give an update from Senator Warner's campaign. Obviously, with the recent protests, a lot of our activities have been involved in addressing that. Senator Warner does stand with the peaceful protests of individuals from the Senate side. He did serve as one of the co-sponsors for the Justice and Policing Act. And some of the things that the Justice and Policing Act will do, it will create a national standard for use of force, ban neck hold, choke holds, and similar excessive force, require the use of body cams for police, require local police departments to send data on the use of force to the federal government, create a grant program that would allow state attorney generals to create an independent process to investigate misconduct, and limit qualified immunity. So many of the things that the chief spoke to earlier in the meeting, I think we're trying to get some federal remedies to address those concerns at the federal level. Also, the Great American Outdoors Act was passed, some legislation that Senator Warner definitely advocated for over the last couple of years that will support 10,000 new jobs in Virginia and 100,000 jobs nationwide, and help us fix some of the parks that have some of the maintenance on national parks throughout the nation. From a campaign perspective, we do have some upcoming events this week and next. Greater Hampton Roads Black Democrats and HBCU students from Mark Warner, which locally consist of co-chairs at Norfolk State and Hampton University. They will host a Juneteenth discussion on Friday at 4 o'clock with Senator Warner. I will drop that event information for that in the chat. We are looking to, just with the high demand of Zoom calls also, we are looking to host some regional Zoom calls, so at Hampton Roads, a specific Zoom call over the next week or two. So just stay tuned for some more details in regards to that also. And also Senator Warner will be speaking at convention this upcoming Saturday, so you can stay tuned. There will be multiple opportunities to hear from Senator Warner directly, and even some opportunities to ask him questions directly over the next couple of weeks. But I'll drop the Black Democrats event in the Slack, in the chat for you all, and feel free to RSVP for that. We look to have a good attendance, and Senator Warner definitely will answer some questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. I'll loop in a second, Atoy. We're running out of time. Kai, are you on here? Coordinating campaign?
I think Kai had to step off the call.
Yeah, she stepped out earlier.
All right, I'm sorry. Atoy, what you got? Get your hand raised, Atoy.
She's saying no. She's saying she doesn't have.
Okay, very good. All right, kind of a deal, electoral board update. I don't know if Barbara or Michael's running with this, but there is news. Barbara?
We can let Barbara start.
Yeah. Yes, I would like to announce that as of this week, I have resigned from the electoral board. It was something that I was going to do in December anyway, when my appointment was up, because I firmly believe that the board needs to be more inclusive and reflective of the community. So I was hoping that we could get an African American on the board. However, I also decided to check off something on my longtime bucket list, and that is to be an elector. And I ran for elector from the 2nd District. There was a little kerfuffle coming out of the convention, so I waited. And then, of course, they moved the primary. So there was all sorts of strange things going on. And over the weekend, I decided that we really needed to have a new person in place by June the 23rd, because as an elector, I cannot be on the electoral board. That is an Attorney General's opinion from 1973. So I resigned early, and I notified Chief Judge Mary Jane Hall, and I notified Charlie. So Charlie, if you would like to take it from there, because we do need to have another Democratic member on the electoral board for Tuesday's election.
We do. And I went ahead and discussion with the officers. We did submit 3 names to the judge. We are waiting on for some paperwork for them to make the decision to fill out the terms. Since it was just a 6-month appointment, we put in Atoy, Grant, and Randy. And we'll find out what happens for the remainder of the term. Michael, you had something you wanted to add?
The only thing I wanted to add is that the Norfolk Electoral Board is one of the best in the state, in the Commonwealth, and a big part of that is Barbara Clear. She has been an amazing and wonderful board member. I've really enjoyed working with her. So it's special shoes to fill. But one thing I will, Barbara's laughing at that comment because we had a shoes discussion earlier. But anyway, we're excited to welcome a new member, whoever that person is. I would imagine we're actually having a meeting on Friday. We'd like you to be part of this, so we can get you up to speed. And then the election next week will be a lighter election, so it would be good training. So it's good timing to have a board member come in then, so that we won't be doing it for the first time at presidential in November, which is a very, very can I say very 1,000 times important election.
It'd be a crazy
But just
time.
a reminder to those in Norfolk that there is no election for you on Tuesday. It is only a Republican primary in Norfolk because, of course, Bobby Scott is unopposed, Mark Warner is unopposed, and Elaine Loria is unopposed, and that is who would be on the primary ballot if they were opposed. So don't bother to come to the polls. Just stay home and socially distance.
All right. All right, let's see if we can wrap up here in 5 minutes.
And Charlie, real quick, just to mention, there are a lot of reasons that a lot of people who might be wonderful on the electoral board have to be excluded. You cannot work for any government agency or have any type of government stipend at all. That is almost the #1 restriction. You cannot be a party chair. You cannot, your spouse cannot do this, whatever. You can't be a campaign manager. The list is rather incredible as to who cannot go on the electoral board. So I just thought I would, you pretty much have to be retired.
Or work for a nonprofit.
Right, exactly.
And one of the other things is as an electoral board member, you will be working on elections all week next week, and for a larger election, it could be going into the following week, and it could also be a month before. And there's a lot of things, especially in Norfolk, going on with making sure our voting is safe and open and a priority. So there's a lot of work to be done. So
when we nominate,
Right.
we'll have
And you've got to be in good health too. You got to have a lot of energy to do this job. It is tiring.
When we nominate somebody for the full term, we'll have a whole plate of things to discuss. All right, just finishing up real quick here. This is convention weekend. The state convention, we will have Joe Biden will be speaking. Bernie Sanders will be speaking. Elizabeth Warren will be speaking. Of course, all of our Virginia elected officials will be speaking. And you don't have to, it was mentioned earlier, you don't have to be a delegate. You can go to that website, the DPVA State 2020. You can watch it. You can catch the speeches and everything so it'll be good. It's already been mentioned that next Tuesday is the Republican primary. And also, if you are a delegate in the 2nd or 3rd Congressional District Convention or committee, an email was sent out. I got mine around noon today. It's similar to the district level convention. You have a unique identifier that will allow you to access the ballot to vote for the 5 members of the Democratic National Committee and our 2 statewide electors. So if you haven't received it, and as Sandra had mentioned, if you're a convention delegate, if you haven't received that email from the state party with that code, let us know so we can make sure you get it. I don't know if that answered your questions. Also, if you go to that website, the DPVA State 2020, they do have a frequently asked questions in there. So if you have something you need answered, you might find it there. If not, just shoot me an email and I'll get it answered for you. We're here to help out. Are there any other questions about the convention this weekend with 1 minute to go?
Charlie, this is Sandra. I would tell people tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, there is a forum with all the people who are running for the DNC. It'll run from 7 to 9, and you can go to the DPVA website and get on.
And again, that website, they have the list of events, how to watch everything. It's great. But you're right. We have a number of people running for the DNC. So with that, all right, we're about running out of time. Our coffee/breakfast is actually July 4th. I'm trying to find Thomas Jefferson to be our guest speaker, but that might be a problem. I've never done a poll before. I'm just curious if it's up on the screen. It's anonymous. If you go to level 3 or situation 3, whatever, and we're allowed to go to restaurants, is anybody not wanting to really go back to amazing soul food? Not for the food, that was great, but just because of the social distancing and all that kind of stuff. So if you get a chance before we finish, just let me know if we're going to remain virtual for a while, if there's uneasiness about getting 100 people in a restaurant again. Oh, do I got to launch this poll? I don't know. Never done a poll before. Go ahead and get in there, answer that question. Feel free. I just want to get a sense if there's hesitancy to getting in the same room together again. With that, any other quick last-minute announcements so we can wrap it up here? Anybody?
Yeah, this is Randy. One last comment on the convention is that there will be a resolutions package up for vote.
Right.
There are 64 resolutions, and the delegates will vote them up or down as a block. There will be nothing pulled out or accepted.
All right. Yeah, very good. And that, of course, is applicable to the delegates to the convention, the voting members.
And the resolutions package may already be in your email inbox. I know I got it today. And so
yes, it was in that email. So again, most importantly, if you are a delegate and you have not gotten the email from the DPVA, please let me know so we can make sure you have it. There's events Friday night, the convention at Saturday morning at 10. And again, similar to the conventions, the voting begins, I think, at 1 p.m. Saturday and will run till Sunday. And yeah, this is kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys can see the poll results or whether it's just me as the host can. But right now, well, we were 50-50 and we're 52-48. So I'm getting a sense there might be a little hesitancy if we go to level 3 containment. We may have people who don't want to go to the restaurant. We'll figure that out. Yes.
On the question on those on the packet of positions, is that the resolutions?
Yeah.
Is that just the state of Virginia's resolutions, or is that the entire Democratic Party?
That's the resolutions of the convention.
Yeah, there's a process by which there's a resolutions committee. They are submitted, they argue about them, they talk about them, and it goes through the whole machinations of approval. Some were considered and not included, and some were not. So, and again, Randy, you said there's 56 of them in there?
But it is just Virginia. There's a separate resolutions committee for the national convention.
Right. Okay.
And does this inform the national one?
No.
It is the sense of the Virginia delegates.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, if you are a delegate to the national convention, you can certainly take our resolutions and present them to the national convention.
Right.
Understood, but basically they're ours as far as Virginia.
Yes.
Got
Yeah,
it.
a lot of them are very Virginia-centric.
All right. With that said, anything else? We're officially 3 minutes over overtime. Anything else?
Can I get that email, Charlie?
What's that, Kim?
I get that email that you were talking about?
You got to tell me if you didn't get it. Yeah, it would have been sent to the email address you registered to be a delegate.
Yeah, check your spam folders.
Yeah, check your spam. It's from the Democratic Party of Virginia.
And check your promotions folder if you have Gmail.
Right. And for whatever it is worth, we are now back to 50-50 on the yes/no on the poll question. So I think the executive board has some discussions that lie in front of us. lie or lay. But good.
That
Anything
will
else?
be placed in front of us.
Yes. All right, the nose just took the lead. All right, with that said, anything else? Thanks for the call. I thought the chief was great, very informative, appreciated. We had coffee mugs. I'd send him one as a parting gift, but we don't have those. So, all right, anything else? Wrap it up. I
Good job,
apologize.
Charlie.
I kept you 5 minutes past schedule, so I'll do better next time. Thanks, everybody. July
Good job,
4th,
Charlie.
and we're going to see what we can get for a great guest speaker for our 4th of July coffee. Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night, Charlie.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.